talked to somebody and you felt like they just knew everything, or they would pull these examples out of the air and you were like, where do you come up with all this? Or what did you study? Or how much do you know? And I would listen to people that were intelligent or listen to people that I liked their content. And I would say, man, how do they know all these different things? And although you have your core area of competency, I think it's really important to do something called headline reading. And maybe that's knowing a little bit about different subjects that may or may not be the subjects that are right up your alley, but it may enable you to connect to a wider audience. Or maybe it connects to somebody that feels like, hey, I know you're not an expert in art because you like sports, but you knew a little bit about art. Or maybe you're not into politics, but you have some little bit of political knowledge. Or maybe you're not really big into business, but you know a little bit about business. And my favorite subjects happen to be the politics and sports and business. And maybe these are like common areas of interest for some people. But I also like to know a little bit about a lot of different things because I want to connect with people. And if you're trying to improve your leadership skills, it's really important to be able to connect with more people. Not being fake or not trying to be a master of everything, but something called headline reading, I think will really help you out. And headline reading could be just paying attention to some categories that are maybe some areas of interest that you're not typically an expert in, but you learn a little bit about it so that you could share it with you. And I'm going to do that with you here today on this video. In the last 7 to 10 days, there's some current events that have taken place, and some of them are pretty interesting, and they're all a little bit different. And I wanted to give you these really rapid fire and show you that you don't have to be an expert on everything, but you could provide value to other people by knowing a little bit about several different subjects. The first is Ferrari. Ferrari IPO'd in 2015. Now, whether you like cars or not, you probably would know what a Ferrari is. And Ferrari is a really fascinating brand because it has so much history. And I am not a Ferrari expert, although I like Ferraris. But I am interested to know that in 2015, it IPO'd for about $9 billion. And 10 years later, 2025, it's a company that's worth about $90 billion. Now, whether that means a lot to you or not, here's the interesting part. The interesting part is that last year they only produced 13,000 cars. And so there are car companies that do millions and millions of cars per year that are only worth half that. So how is Ferrari worth $90 billion and it only produced 13,000 cars? And this is really important, and it came from their CEO. Their CEO said, we are not, and I repeat, we are not an automotive or car company. We are a luxury company who happens to also do cars. Pay attention to that. And the takeaway from that headline is this, that how you market yourself and how you brand yourself has everything to do with how other people perceive your value. If Ferrari had marketed itself just as a car company, it would not be worth $90 billion because even all the cars they make added up wouldn't even be $90 billion. So how could it be worth that? But because they marketed themselves as a luxury brand company who happens to also do cars, they're worth $90 billion. Great job to Ferrari. Next one would be Elon Musk. Elon Musk is in the news for so many different things, but one of the ones that I like the most is, but when the federal government of the United States has to ask its workers, or Trump's advisor, Elon Musk, has to ask workers to, what did you do in the last week? Then you know that we have a problem with accountability. And in order for us to tighten up our reins or to be better as a country, for Republicans and for Democrats, we need to tighten up our accountability. And he said that if you don't submit your email at the end of the week, we'll take that as a form of a resignation. So whether you're working in the public sector or the private sector, I think it's awesome to know I come from the private sector, and I like to know that the public sector has accountability just like the private sector does. And I think that's great. Kudos to you, Elon Musk, for what it is that you're doing there. Next one, Microsoft. Microsoft is developing a computer chip. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I don't know that much about computer chips, but this is pretty fascinating. Microsoft is developing a chip, and Google is also developing a chip, and Google said that their newest chip will be able to do in 5 minutes supercomputation. I don't know any of these words. I don't even know what septillion means, but apparently septillion is 10 with 24 zeros following it. Why do I share that with you? Because Google's new chip will be able to do in 5 minutes what today's supercomputer can do in 10 septillions, or whatever that means, but in that many years. Why am I sharing this with you? Because even a person like me who is not a technology expert knows that the world is completely changing with AI and the number of new chips that are coming out. It's going to change the way that we do business. Kudos to Microsoft and kudos to Google for developing these things. Although I may never have a full understanding on how it works, I hope it helps my world in some regard. Here's another. Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines has been around for 53 years. And in the last 53 years, in that amount of existence, it has never had mass corporate layoffs. Unfortunately, it just announced that 15% of its corporate workforce is going to be laid off. Now, that's not people that are flying planes. That's not individuals that are working at the terminals. This is corporate workers. That's 1,750 jobs that are gone. And being in Dallas, and I'm located in Dallas, and so Southwest Airlines, that's a really big deal, especially when Southwest Airlines is one of the better airlines that are out there. That's going to affect a lot of different workers. And so there's a lot of companies that are in the next few years, they may be achieving higher and higher returns, or maybe their company's doing well, but they're going to be laying off a lot of people because they need less people. And your opinion on that really matters. If you're somebody that's out there saying, hey, if they're making so much money, why do they need to fire people or lay people off? There's a trimming that's going on across the world right now, and that has to do with all federal and private sector workers, and it can affect your job too. Make sure to have a plan B to your career. Make sure to find another industry to work in if something was to happen to your job, because that could really affect you. Next one, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett runs Berkshire Hathaway. For those that don't know what Berkshire Hathaway is, it's one of the largest companies in the United States, and it owns percentages of a lot of other companies. Things like railroads or insurance companies. Maybe you've heard of Geico. Warren Buffett owns a percentage of a lot of different companies, and he's very good at picking stocks. People usually try to do what Warren Buffett does because he has incredible returns for the last couple decades, several decades actually. Well, right now, Warren Buffett is holding over $300 billion in cash. Berkshire Hathaway is holding that money. Why does that matter? Because that amount of money as a percent to his assets is the highest amount of cash that Berkshire Hathaway has held in cash since 1998. What does that mean if you're just a regular investor or somebody that's trying to understand the economy? What that means is this. Think about last time, 1998. What happened after 1998? In 2000, 2001, 2002, the stock market crumbled. The tech market burst. There was a lot of things that were going on in our economy. Obviously, 9/11 was right in the middle of it, but we had a lot of issues economically, and the S&P 500 took a really big dive. When Berkshire Hathaway is holding $300 billion in cash outside of the stock market, it believes that the stock market is too overly valued or overpriced. Terminology that I read about is that right now the stock market is priced at 22 and a half times its earnings. When historical averages, it's 18 and a half times its earnings, which means you may want to put some of your money or hedge against maybe a stock market loss in the next 6 to 12 months. I don't know what the stock market's going to do, but I know I'm in the business of having secure investments. Make sure you look at things like annuities or some other services out there that may be risk adverse. And I could be wrong, and I'm not speculating on anything, but Warren Buffett sure thinks that the market may be dropping soon. The United States government with the quarter ending in September. So this is when Joe Biden was still the president. Notated that they had $149 billion, okay? $149 billion of either overspending, fraud, or double payments, essentially mistakes, which accounted for 3.7% of our total amount of payments. Now, what does that mean? The United States government last year paid out $4.1 trillion, and they notated that almost 4% of it, or per $25, $1 per $25 was a complete mistake. Now, this is not the Doge stuff. This is not the other items that are being audited right now. This is per their own reporting that there's a lot of waste that's taking place and a lot of double payments. And I think you're hearing a lot of stuff in the news about this. We need to tighten this part up. So if anybody is upset at what's going on with the current administration, please ask yourself this. If the private sector can lay people off, or the private sector can rein in spending, why couldn't the federal government do the same thing? It is not against workers to hold people accountable and to make sure that the taxpayer money is going in the right place. I'm a big fan of reining this in and making sure that our dollars are best well spent. Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt, you're amazing. 27 years old and press secretary to Donald Trump. And one thing that I really like about this young lady is this. I don't know her personally, but in the reading that I've done with her, I could tell that she's a great student. She gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, reads 2.5 hours of articles. But here's really where it comes in. Donald Trump has a lot of options for press secretary. He could put a lot of people in that position. Why Miss Levitt? Well, I believe it's because she's a flag carrier. Now, that's a terminology that we use in our business. Flag carrier means that you're somebody that speaks and can endorse and is really there for the person that employs you or for the person that trains you or your mentor. And to Donald Trump, that's amazing. She speaks the language of Donald Trump. Great job to Miss Levitt for what you're doing. And it's an inspiration to all 27-year-olds out there that if you are a great apprentice and you work diligently and you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you read and you give value to other people, you might just get noticed by president or somebody like the president and maybe get pulled up there. You deserve it. You're doing a great job. And finally, DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a very sensitive subject for a lot of individuals. It's kind of going by the wayside and it's leaving. But if you study, the US Labor Department came out with a report, and it said that prior to the DEI initiatives of the late 2018, 19, 20, when that really started becoming a big thing, prior to that, 35% of individuals in S&P 500 companies were minority groups. And since DEI and all the money and all the time and all the energy that went into it, that number only rose 3% from 35% to 38%. And when I speak to our associates in our office, and we have a very diverse office, I say, you don't get to diversity by just adding up how many white people, black people, Mexican people, or women or men or old or young that you have. You get to diversity by giving people freedom, by treating people with respect, by giving everybody that comes into your opportunity an equal opportunity to grow. And I think that the cards and the chips will fall where they may, and you'll end up with a very diverse workforce. That's my belief. I've been in business for 25 years, and we've been able to recruit and build some pretty cool teams in many different markets in the United States. And I'm a big fan of diversity, but how we get there, I'm not a fan of DEI. I'm glad to know that the reporting came out and it has not made a dent out there. I'm a big fan of people getting an opportunity and going up there and getting it, but you're going to have to do that through freedom and work hard and take personal responsibility. And I think anybody can win in the United States. And no, I don't think that the DEI system worked.